Best focuses on short-term rentals, where we interview top operators and investors in the short-term rental space. And this show is really designed to help you better invest your time and money as you'd love to deploy your assets in real estate, specifically short-term rentals. I'm very honored to have a special guest on the show today, Avery Carl. Avery, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
So Avery has the distinction of being the first guest ever to come back on the show. So Avery did an episode with me about almost a year ago. Avery and I go way back, and she goes back longer with my wife Elizabeth. When we were first looking at short-term rentals and buying short-term rentals, Avery was one of the first agents we'd reach out to in back in 2018, I think. And then I think we have the funny story where I think we caught her in like a Taco Bell on the phone many moons ago. But Avery has built a tremendous business through her firm, the Short Term Shop, brokered by EXP Realty. Um, it's one of the largest, most influential short-term rental brokerages in the country, and honored to have her back on the show. Avery was one of the first people that helped us in our journey, and Avery, just welcome back. It's good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so the Taco Bell story, I would like to point out that I was extremely pregnant. Not that I don't love Taco Bell, not pregnant, but I don't eat like that like all the time. But I do remember I was like, oh, I got to call this girl Liz back, but let me slam this Taco Bell first. So yes, I don't know why that's what sticks out in my brain about the first time talking to you guys, but it was.
Okay? What was the last time you've been to Taco Bell?
The last time I had Taco Bell, probably like sometime in the last 6 months. I usually only get it like if we're on a road trip.
Okay, nice. Well, you've been busy. I mean, you've been traveling. But why don't we kind of first set the stage? Like, tell us what you've been up to. Tell us a little bit about the short-term shop.
Yeah. So, short-term shop, we've been around almost 10 years now, and we were the first and largest short-term rental specific brokerage or team within a brokerage at EXP Realty. We've got offices in about 20 markets. We've been the number one team in the world at EXP 3 years in a row. We were number two last year because the number one guy bought somebody else's team, which is cheating, but whatever. He's a good guy. So we've got offices in 20 markets, beach markets, mountain markets, some kind of metro markets. So like Scottsdale and Orlando, even though they have a big vacation component, they're still technically a metro market. So we have a pretty good cross section of what the short-term rental, not just rental market, but sales market is doing kind of across the country. So we're, kind of weathering the storm very well. In terms of the real estate market, which we can get into how bad the real estate market really is. But,
Yeah.
just hanging out, helping people buy short-term rentals. We've helped over 5,000 people buy and sell short-term rentals. And that's what we're going to continue to do, sticking to our primary flywheel. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, the two of those 5,000 are Elizabeth and Michael Chang. Avery and her team, specifically Julie, who's now retired now. Which is shocking, by the way, retired. They helped us buy our first short-term rental, closed in September 2020 in the Smoky Mountains. I just like bought it for $559,000. Closed September 29th. The roof. Thank God we got the roof replaced the next day. Basically the next day, right after we closed, we got the roof replaced, and that property is probably 900-ish right now. If we were to sell right now, 900-ish. So it's pretty good equity appreciation. But more than that, it has cash flowed. Last time I checked, over the last 5 years, cash flow, and I mean actually like cash in pocket, almost $200,000. Just like
Awesome.
kind of incredible if you think about it. So yeah, one of our most successful investments ever. So shout out to Avery and shout out to Julie. So I want to kind of frame the show a little bit today. If you want to know a little bit about kind of how Avery and I met, I'll refer back to our prior episode. We talked a lot about that and about how to choose a short-term rental agent. But today I want to hit on, since Avery's really kind of grown her business since we last talked a year ago. She has a lot of touch points in all the different markets through her team. And I want to spend the first kind of part of the show talking about her view of the market. And then the second part talking about how she's evolving and solidifying her business, as we kind of go through 2025 and looking forward into the next year or two, given the rate environment and the economic environment. So Avery, you kind of started off saying like, kind of the truth. So give us the unvarnished truth of what's going on and why don't we start with just kind of the broader real estate market, kind of people see some of the numbers, and then what's happening really within short-term rentals.
Sure. So the broader real estate market is in the toilet, to be frank. So to give you guys kind of a frame of reference, we measure how the real estate market is doing, like the health of the real estate market, by the number of transactions, like number of homes that are sold each year. And fewer homes were sold in 2023, 2024, and looking like 2025 as well than the entire last 35 years. So, when everybody thinks of a real estate crash, you think of 2008 and the aftermath of a few years after 2008. More homes were sold 2008, 9, 10 than in the last 3 years. So that should paint a pretty good picture of how bad the real estate market is right now. But there are some major differences. So back then, people weren't buying houses because they couldn't, because it was a credit crisis. Now they're not buying houses because they're choosing not to. The lending regulations are a lot stricter now. Back then, people were getting 100% loans or over 100% loans. Now they have been super strict ever since then. There's a lot of equity in the market, but people are just choosing not to buy properties because 83% of mortgages right now out there, people who have mortgages, are less than 6%. So somebody who has a mortgage right now that's like at 4.5%, well, they're not going to jump up, even if they need to move or make a lateral move or just, buy a new primary home. They're not going to jump up to a 6.9% mortgage. That's not realistic. So they're just choosing to wait. They're making do. So really, really bad in terms of selling your property right now. Anybody who comes to us right now, we're like, if you don't have a cash flow problem, if you're not like losing money on this property, don't sell it. And like, I'd love to list it for you. I'd love to make, the commission on it, but it's not in your best interest to put anything on the market right now because the real estate market is so terrible. Now,
Yeah. Sorry, Avery, can I pause you there for a moment? So
sure.
I just want to just kind of pull out a few points there. One, when you talk about the real estate market being historically bad, I think I want to clarify that it's based on, from more, it's based on a transaction volume type perspective, right? So there's just fewer deals transacting, fewer houses being sold.
Right.
And we contrast it back to, 08 to 2010. The economy is a lot bigger and the population is bigger too. So there's actually just more homes. So on a relative basis, if you're saying that it's lower than what it was 15 years ago, it's actually like doubly bad just because, just the market overall is bigger and the number of transactions is even smaller still. But then when you talk about, I guess more about a lack of liquidity in this market right now, where people aren't forced to sell because they have a lot of equity, but it's hard to get financing. Maybe talk about like why is it a bad time to sell right now? Because it sounds like prices are prices still okay. It's just like no one's buying it, or if you're listing it at a price, you're going to expect a pretty big discount to that listing price. Like, kind of give us a little bit more insight on that.
So it's going to be a little bit specific to what your situation is, but prices are still historically high now, but they
Right.
are lower than what they were in 2021. And the reason they got so high so quickly in 2021 and 22 is because there were 1,000 people offering on every single property, and the wars driving those things up. So now what we're seeing, especially in vacation markets, so the type of market that I primarily focus on are vacation markets, where like 90% of the real estate that's bought and sold in these markets since well before Airbnb, before the internet, has been vacation homes and vacation rentals. So for, if the majority of buyers in these markets are not necessarily even investors. They just want a toy. I call them boat alternatives. We have a lot of boat alternative markets. So, a wealthy person in Birmingham, Alabama, maybe they're going to buy a boat or maybe they're going to buy a vacation home. and 30A. But they're not necessarily looking at it from an investment standpoint. So anyway,
Okay.
these types of markets, even though there are lots of investors in these types of markets, have a ton of inventory. So you see a lot of news stories about, oh, there's no inventory. We have an inventory shortage. In vacation markets, there is a lot of inventory. So you are starting to see bigger discounts, because what typically will move a property in vacation markets right now is really good rental history or the right price. And so when people come to list with us, we're like, okay, let's look at what you paid for it. Great. Now we have a frame of reference for what you need to get for this property. But now you can look at sold comps, but that only tells part of the story. Yes, there might have been a property identical to yours that sold for exactly what you want to sell for last year. But the bigger piece of the story, the more important piece, in my opinion, now is the other active listings. Because if you've got 3 or 4 properties that are similar to yours that have been on the market for longer, that are listed for cheaper than what the sold comps were, if you overlook that, you're not going to sell. So you got to look at when, what buyers are presented with when they're just cruising Zillow.
Got
So,
it.
yeah, market's
And
even worse in vacation markets.
okay, it's even more. Okay, okay. Yeah, because you kind of read like the primary, there's an article out, I think, in Zillow or the Wall Street Journal, where they talk about it's going to tail to markets like Florida. Um, there's a lot of inventory in Florida, but if you look at the Northeast and the Midwest, there's actually like a pretty big, and I think this is more broadly, this isn't just short-term rentals. But like there's actually, in the Northeast, like I live in New York City. I mean, things are still like, you know, 10 offers, like a decent house in a good school district. Like you're seeing over ask like 10 offers. It's like back crazy Smokies 2021 style. We had a friend who offered on a house and it was like 20 of the offers on the house and it traded like 50% over ask. So yeah, I mean, and when I say 50% over ask, I mean like, it went from like 2.4 million versus like 2.2. Like these aren't like small little things that like trade. These aren't like a $300,000 row house. These are like $2 million homes in New Jersey. So like, I think there's a little bit of like tail and two markets, but let's go back to short-term rentals. The what you also talked about the rental history, right? And I think that's also a really critical point. Because when we look at properties, the first thing I look at actually is the rental history, and then I'll look at the other, what else is in the area. So we talk about that dynamic where, okay, you're looking to sell, you obviously know what you paid for it, you know what the sold comps around you, and you're looking at the inventory kind of similar to yours. How do you think about the rental history?
So with rental history, it doesn't actually add any value appraisal wise to the property, but it will just make your property easier to sell versus, the other two on the street that might be pretty similar to yours. So rental history is important. I would say more important than it ever has been,
Mhm.
because now buyers, especially new ones, that are not comfortable with using tools like AirDNA, they
Yeah.
only want to see that this property did really well. And you could tell them all day, well, if you get in there and you don't manage it as well as this guy that owns it now, you're not going to do this. You need to look at some other things. They're very specific about wanting to see just the rental history. So
It,
it's interesting.
it is very interesting, and that's why I always tell the students that we coach in our program is like the operator quality is critical. Like you're not whatever you see on your DNA or B&B Cal, like you're not going to hit those numbers exactly. It's just not going
Right.
to, you're going to do better or worse, right? And a lot of that's driven by the operator quality. So is John Smith, who's never done short-term rentals, buys mine, and I've done it for 9 years now. Are they going to do exactly as well as I have? Probably not, right? And then vice versa, right? If I'm buying something where it's operated by John Smith, that's kind of on his boat most of the time and not really focused on his short-term rental, right? I probably will do better than him just because I've been doing this for a lot longer. So if you're out there listening, right? Like the education part, the operator quality part is absolutely critical. Whether you're buying a property, whether you're leasing it for rental arbitrage, whatever that is, like the quality of how you operate is critical, and that's why you're listening to this today, and educating yourself on how to be, the best structural rental investor plus the best structural rental operator. Like that's really going to generate real returns for you. So let's let's zoom out. So bad sounds like pretty bad
It's
overall.
bad. Period.
So you have bad. Okay, so there's 20 you're in 20 markets. How are there any pockets of relative strength or pockets to where there's like real distress where things are kind of trading really below ask. So if you're listening to this right now and people are trying to figure out, okay, I still want to get in, right? Bonus depreciation is at 40%. Maybe with the new tax bill it goes back to 100. So I want to pre-position myself so that when it's time to jump, like I know where the right market is. So maybe give us a little bit of insight, just given you have so much visibility into the top markets here in the U.S.
Sure. So where the opportunity is right now is those high inventory markets, those boat alternative markets. So if you go into like a Nashville right now, you're competing with, primary home buyers, things like that, or like an Austin. But if you go into like a Smokies or an Orlando or even a 30A, Destin, these areas, especially in Florida. Florida is on sale right now because it's had a lot going against it the last few years, like insurance prices. We've had a couple hurricanes, so people get a little scared off of Florida when that happens. So for like, I'll use an example for me. I live in Florida. After church a few weeks ago, or I guess 8 or 9 weeks ago now, my husband Luke and I were like, well, we should probably buy a piece of real estate. Let's go look at some places. So I said, all right, well, we're going to get a deal. So we looked at 10 places. I only wanted to look at places that had been on market for 9 months or over. So we
Nine
looked
months,
at,
okay, 9 months and over. Okay, 9 months and over Florida. Okay.
yeah. So we looked at 10 properties, offered super low on 3. 2 people told us to go to hell and didn't even respond to us. But the last person, actually on my favorite house, they started at 1.27 asking price, back when they first listed it about a year ago. They've kind of creeped down a little bit. They were at like 9 something. We were able to get it for 815. So,
What was the first offer? What was it?
oh
Like,
gosh,
I
I wanted to
didn't.
go 800, but Luke,
Okay.
like, he always has to like take it a step further. We offered 750. And so, we
750.
offered extremely low, lower than a lot of people are like, a lot of people are afraid to offer that low. But, right now, the people that are listed in these boat alternative markets, they're not listed because they want to be. They're not listed because
Exactly.
it's a great time to sell and they're going to make a ton of money. They're listed because they need to be. So if you go through and make a lot of offers, you will eventually find one that's willing to give you a deal. So that's how you get the deals right now. That's what the opportunity is of being in a terrible real estate market, is if you can find a property that at the interest rates we're able to get right now works even a little bit, you can get big discounts. And I think that, there's all these memes going around about, oh, I wish I wouldn't have been in 4th grade during 2008. I should have been buying real estate. I think in
Well,
10 years,
yeah,
people are going to look at this time now when nobody was buying real estate and say, oh crap, I should have bought real estate during that time. So the opportunity is out there. You have no competition. I always say you can have one of these 3 things. You can have low competition, low prices, or low interest rates. So right
yeah,
now we have low competition. 2 years ago, we had low interest rates and it was a complete bloodbath, like zombie apocalypse of people climbing over each other to buy houses. So I prefer the low competition myself as an investor.
yeah. No, it's I think that's really smart, and shout out to Luke on offerings. Yeah, okay, I think people get offended. I think there's a little bit of like there's one price anchoring, right, where someone is asking for X dollars. You feel bad giving what can be what 2 of those 3 people felt insulted at and not even responded, right? But I think you're trying to tease out that person that just really wants that liquidity, really wants to sell. So I just want to kind of highlight that again. So 1.27 was the original list 9 months, 9+ months ago. They've obviously want to sell because they didn't take it off the market. So it's been on the market for this long. That's a sign that
Mhm.
this person really wants to sell, and they brought down the price probably a couple times. What was it when you made the first offer? Nine
I think
nine
it was like 975.
975, right? So 975. You're already 20% below the original list price, and that person really wants to get out, and then you offer 750, which is another 25%. So you just think that person went
Back.
from 1.27 and then got a $750,000 offer. So almost a $500,000 discount to what their original expectation was, $500,000 below. And they still had they still were able to collect themselves
Mhm.
and go to your agent and said, hey, I still got to get out. So go back and get me the best deal that you can. I'm kind of curious. So what did if you don't mind, just like kind of what did it come back with when you offer 750? Did they say what did it say?
They came back somewhere in the nines, and then we finally got
Nine.
down to I think it was 830 something, and then we were able to get another, or not 30 something. We were able to get another like 7,500 once we got through the inspection, which brought us down to 815. So
Beautiful.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
tough
look,
though.
yeah, look. I mean, it's a willing buyer and willing seller, right? This person, anyone that owns $1 million house is not unsophisticated, right? So they had to get out, and you offered a path out. So look, I mean, look, whether or not it's a good investment, honestly, time will tell. Let's be intellectually honest here.
That's with
You
anything.
could have you could have overpaid at 825, right? But you definitely would have overpaid at 1.275. So I think that's kind of the lesson. It's I call it a margin of error, right? If you bought at 1.675, your margin of error is pretty low. You buy at 825, your margin of error is relatively a lot higher than it was. If you paid $500,000 more. Now, could it come down a little bit more? Of course it can. Like the
Mhm.
market's the market, but you've anchored. The one variable, one of the variables in real estate that you can't change your basis, what you paid for it, you got it at a pretty good price. So you just you maximize your opportunity for success, and that's why I always kind of highlight. When we talk about investing, there's no certainty, right? There's no such thing as guaranteed this is going to make money for you. Like if it's guaranteed, it's probably not going to.
Right.
It's not an investment. You're just putting it in a savings account, right? So there's always the element of risk. What you always really want to do is calculate that risk. What can I do? I spent 870, 825 here. What's the return? What's the high case? What's the low case? And if it really goes down, then do I have enough reserves to make sure that I can fund this property for 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, and get through that volatility, right? Like that ultimately is the receipt for success in this business because there is going to be volatility. You have to accept that, and if you do and you manage around that, that's how you really can win this game. So if you're out there, you're doing the work, kudos to you because now is the time when you can really actually make good money because you can get really good deals. So, Avery, shout out to you and Luke getting a great deal like that. And look, don't be offended, right? I mean, don't be offended by giving a low ball offer. What's the worst it can do?
They still,
Say no.
and then yeah, and you can always come back and raise it later. Like if you're like, oh crap, I went too low, I would have gone higher. Just come back. It's not like they have a line out the door right now of people willing to pay more. So they will, I'm not saying everybody will be reasonable, but like they'll look at your offer. They're not gonna, and 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100, they're not gonna say, oh, that person already pissed me off, I'm not gonna look at their next offer.
Exactly. And giving an offer is fairly simple. You're looking at it, you give a call, you call your real estate agent and they give you, like, hey, I'm going to pay this. They can probably just call the other agent and say, hey, I have a buyer, they're serious, they're willing to offer X. And then, like that's kind of what you need to, I mean, is there anything more than that just to give like a preliminary offer, Avery? Or do you have to kind of go through the whole kind of offer sheet and do the whole thing? Is it pretty easy to give an offer?
Yeah,
Or
I
at least
mean,
get some feedback?
you want to definitely put it on paper. I know a lot of people are like, well, let's just give them a verbal. So verbals are great until something happens and you don't have it on paper. So always have your agent write it up and send it over, and that way it's there. They have a deadline of when they can sign it, because when you start doing the verbal thing, especially as the market picks up, which I don't think it's going to do right this second, but it will eventually. I think we only need to get rates down like close to 6. Everybody's like, rates aren't going back down. Well, we don't need them to go to 3 again for the market to start moving. I think just like in the low 6s is kind of where things will start to move again. So you always want it on paper presented to them, because verbal, things happen and people can say, never mind. and you don't have it, you don't have a signature. So
Fair enough. And look, I mean, this is why you built, and this is how you built your company, right? Like following the process. And maybe it's a good kind of transition point in the conversation. Um, there are a lot of there are a lot of real estate agents, kind of broadly speaking. It's one of the it's a fairly low barrier to entry, to be candid, to
oh
become a
yeah,
real estate
oh
agent.
yeah.
You pass the test, you pay a couple bucks, and then you find a brokerage that's willing to sign you on. Barrier to entry is low, obviously highly competitive, and really like kudos to you for being able to build this business, right? So maybe talk a little about that. Like, what was because you know I would imagine when you first started, it was maybe with your husband, and you got family stuff going on. You're trying to build your own short-term rentals. Maybe just talk to like, what were the like? How did the idea of like, hey, I want to build. I don't want just like Avery to run around and sell houses. I want to build a team. I want to build the number one team with an EXP that's in 20 markets and hundreds of agents. Like, maybe just walk us through that like that mindset actually versus the execution part, just the mindset, like how you got from I'm going to be the best real estate agent to I'm going to build the best short-term rental brokerage.
Well, I think I didn't start out like that. So I never thought, okay, I'm going to be the best real estate agent in Sevierville, or I'm going to build the biggest short-term rental team in the country. That was never the goal. I just wanted to make enough money on selling real estate to live comfortably, to be able to. We didn't have kids when I first started selling real estate, but to have the ability to be home with the kids and not have to, my old job, they would have had to be in daycare from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with my commute times. And like, that was never going to make sense. Wasn't something I was willing to do. Um, so I just wanted to like make $100,000 a year. That was my goal. But really my goal was just to do a good job for my clients, because real estate investors, they buy more than one property, and they buy more than one property because they're successful with the first one. So my goal was to make sure to focus on the client's success rather than how many properties I could sell. And we built a really good rapport with all of our clients by making sure that they were successful. So they'd come back and buy more with us. And then they'd say, oh, Avery, bought a couple properties with you in the Smokies. I want a beach house. Is there a U in Destin? And I was like, well, no, let me figure out how to do this where I can put one. And then the short-term shop was born. So I never set out to do this. But then as time went on and our clients were like, oh, kind of want to buy one here, kind of want to buy one there. All of our growth and decisions are based on what our clients want and have asked for, rather than how can I go out and be the biggest or be the best. It's really more based on client feedback, and again, on their success more so than how can I, run out there and beat everybody else.
Well, you have beat everyone else, so kudos to you on that.
Side effect.
That's great. It's focusing on client success. Like, we've done multiple transactions together. We have a mutual. He's your client, a mutual friend, who's done a lot of business with you. And he always talks about like, hey, like you know, you want to work with agents that are going to make you money and get you the right deal. So our friend always, he's Sandeep. Our friend Sandeep always
Oh
kind of
yeah,
says that.
Sandeep. Oh, Sandeep.
So,
He was an old
oh,
school
Sandeep.
Avery client. He was my personal client. Oh, love Sandeep.
I actually had it when I was in Austin. I invited him to lunch. So him, I, and Liz, we're sitting at the Four Seasons having lunch, and then just regaling about, you know, kind of the Smokies from 2020 to, where it is today. And, the common thread really is like, hey, having the right agent there, like giving you the right information, being able to get you the right deals early on, has been a huge kind of driver to his and I's success. And, I think kind of your point about client success is really critical, right? Like, people want to do people want to do business with people they like. They also want to do business with people that make money for them. To be
Yeah,
honest, that's
right.
right. They
Yes.
can maybe not
We'll
like
make
you as
money
much,
for
but if they
people.
make money with you, they're probably going to come back to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's on the real estate side. That's really, really, really critical. But I want to kind of just talk about you. I think but a lot of other agents are similarly focused on client success, right? It's not a secret sauce to be right, intellectually honest. Like everyone wants to admit their clients to do well, but you've
Yeah.
really kind of risen to the top. Maybe just talk a little bit about that, like, or maybe some key actions outside of focusing on client success that helps you. Like, was it like a growth mindset? Like, hey, well, I can't be in Destin, but let me find the right person in Destin and work with them, develop partnership with them, versus maybe, agent B or person B would have been like, okay, well, let me actually just try to learn Destin and like I can do the Smokies and Destin. I'm just gonna like do everything myself. Maybe just talk a little bit about
Um, so I guess for me, what has allowed the short-term shop to grow the way that it has is that I'm kind of a workhorse. So, a lot when we hired an agent in Destin, I was like, I mean, who do I know? I grew up going to Destin. Who do I know here that might be a real estate agent? Well, Rush Valentine. I grew up with him. We went to the same elementary school. His mom was my high school guidance counselor. And so I just called him up. I'm like, hey, hadn't talked to you in like 15 years. Do you want to do this? And he was like, yeah, okay, sure. But in terms of like getting it really moving and going, I came up, and not to be like David Green sports analogy here, but I came up in athletics. So from a very young age, I got super serious about soccer. So I was playing select. I mean, even I played everything up until probably like eighth or ninth grade, but got super serious about soccer because I saw it as my ticket out of small town Mississippi. And so it was when you're really focusing on athletics like that, the amount of work you put in versus your success is very dependent on that. You can't outsource it. You just have to get in there. I was like going and running several miles during lunch in high school, and directly after school, I was going to run and doing all these extra things before I go to soccer practice. Then I had a weight trainer. Then I had an individual. Like we lived where Mississippi State University is, so my parents hired their goalkeeper coach to come coach me extra. So it was just very much like the more work you put in, the more you're willing to do that other people won't do, the more successful you're going to be. And it got me out of Mississippi. And not that Mississippi is that bad place to be, but every small town girl wants to get out. And so that has always been kind of ingrained in me. If you're willing to do that work that other people won't do. So like I lived 4 hours from the Smokies. People thought I was nuts. Why are you driving out there to look at houses when you can just refer it to somebody else? Well, I don't have anything else to do today. I might as well get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, drive a few hours and, measure this door frame for this client that asked me to measure a door frame and, video a few houses and drive home. And so because I was willing to do these things that other people thought were crazy, we've been able to build a lot more success just by being willing to do the work that other people are not willing to do.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. I like it's actually the first time you and I know each other for a long time. I never actually heard this from you, and actually when you said that, I was listening to you, but all I was thinking of was my daughter actually. She's 3.5 right now. Getting into sports, and I think it's this is not really real estate, but it's just kind of like building for yourself. Um, like honestly, you can't really control how smart your kids are, right? Your kids are smart. They're like really smart or like whatever along that threshold or that spectrum they are. You really can't control how smart they are. Like they're going to be who they are, and you're going to support them, all that stuff, right? I think just really as parents, what you can do, and shout out to your folks that did it for you, is it's like you can control how hard you work. Like I was like, you can control how hard you work, and that's all I was like. Even at my daughter's 3.5, and I was telling Tina like, just I want her to focus. I want her to like, she's doing something, just like actually pay attention and do stuff because like that's especially what you can control. And I love that about how from a young age that was really ingrained to you, like what you get out, what you put in, right? To me, just to sum it up. And I think and that's done a lot for you in your life to be able to build the short-term shop to where it is today. And I think that's such a great lesson. Like I was just kind of thinking about Athena. I was like, hey, yeah, like my wife and I are thinking about sports and stuff for her, and just we didn't grow up playing sports. Um, but that's something that we really want to push for her. Doesn't matter if she's good or bad, honestly. And that just like I want her to like take it
Very
seriously,
good.
just be good at, and just like not be good at it, just be the best that she can be, right? And I think that is going to serve her well in life. Where hey, if I got a client and I got to do something that's like seemingly inconvenient, drive 4 hours to go do something, right? Like that's how I'm going to do the work and how I'm going to be successful because I'm willing to do that. Whereas 99% of the people are just going to refer it out to someone and not own that client relationship. Like Avery was going to drive 4 hours, going to do what the client asked for and maybe go above and beyond that. The client recognizes that. And then now, she's a client or he or she is a client of hers for the rest of their life, right? Like you and I've done multiple deals together. Our friend Sandeep, I think, has done like tens of deals with you guys. And so that's like that one, and it all starts from there, like that one client, that one, you know, person that you make money for that likes you. They can, they're your best, their best marketing, right? They were telling all their friends about what a great job you did, bring you business, help you grow. Um, and all comes from the ability to do the work. Like, you
I
can't
think
really,
maybe the
do the
word you're
work.
looking for is grit. Like
It's
athletics,
great.
whether
Yeah.
you're good or bad, like I don't care.
Resilience.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't care if my kids are good or bad at sports, but they're going to be in at least one sport, and one art, whether it's theater or music or what have you. I'm making them play piano. Anyway, that's beside the point. But athletics teaches you grit. It's the best way
Yeah.
to teach your kids grit is athletics.
I love it. I love it. I think it's a great place to end the show. Yeah, no, just great. Whatever you're doing, right? Whether it's short-term rental investing and wherever the market is right now, the grit, the resilience to continue to look at properties, to make offers, right? Whether if you're an operative right now and you're going through your low season, you're going through whatever seasonality, and like just the grit to kind of get through that versus quitting. Or if you are a real estate agent and like you're starting out whatever you are in your life cycle, and just being able to kind of see past that and do the work, right? If you do the work, you're gonna get the results. Control what you can control. I think that's really the best advice. Avery, so folks that are listening here today, if they're interested in learning more about short-term shop, they're looking to either buy or sell real estate, what's the best way to reach out to you and your team?
Yeah. So our website, theshorttermshop.com. If you want to follow us on social media, we have a big Facebook group, like 70,000 investors. It's the same title as my most recent book called Smarter Short-Term Rentals. You can follow us on Instagram at the Short Term Shop. Or if you want to follow me personally, it's at the Avery Carl.
Perfect. And we'll, folks in the show notes, we'll have the website, we'll have some Avery socials on there, and definitely reach out to Avery and team on if you're looking at short-term rentals. They're great. They've been a great resource for my wife and I over the last 5 years, or 7 years now. So we are big fans of Avery and what she's built. And Avery, thanks again for coming back on. You're the first return guest, and we'll have you back on in a year, and you can tell us more about. You can give us another update on the market. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.